Imagine your wedding day as that long-awaited moment for those you truly love. Can you feel the emotion and anxiety of that day? What no one would expect is that at a moment like this someone could be abandoned at the altar, right there in front of all their friends and family. But that's how it happened. That's what we'll see in today's story, but with a surprising ending that no one expected. In a charming small town, where green fields stretched as far as the eye could see, lived Penelope, a beautiful young architect. With her life full of plans and expectations, she seemed to be living a fairy tale about to be turned upside down. In an old mansion, grand and full of history, where several generations of the same family have lived. In this setting, Penelope was preparing to marry Zion, a nobleman with a charming smile. She was very happy, but she couldn't stop thinking about how nervous Zion was. Penelope couldn't understand why Zion was so restless on that special day. Everything seemed perfect, the mansion, the moment, their love. But there was something different, something that made Penelope worried and curious to find out what was going on. What was Zion hiding? In the days before the wedding, Penelope noticed something strange about Zion. He who was always so cheerful, now seemed sad and distant, trapped in thoughts he didn't want to share. Penelope tried to calm down, telling herself it was just pre-wedding jitters, and continued with the preparations, dreaming of a future full of happiness. The sun rose radiantly, filling the day with its golden light. The church, decorated with white flowers and silk ribbons, looked like something out of a fairy tale. Penelope, dressed in white, looked beautiful and pure as she walked slowly down the aisle. Zion was waiting for her, but his eyes looked sad in contrast to the joy of the moment. At that crucial moment, the priest asked, "Zion, do you take Penelope to be your wife?" Zion stopped. He looked into Penelope's eyes and with a heavy sigh said, "I'm sorry, Penelope." Before anyone could understand what was happening, he turned and ran off, leaving Penelope in shock and all the guests stunned. It was an instant that no one would ever forget. Penelope was in shock and began to cry. She looked at everyone and thought, "My God, what a shame. What do I do now?" Her brother, who was to be best man, hugged her and led her slowly out of the church, while everyone looked on curiously. All she could think was, "Shame on you, God. What a shame." Over the next few days, she cried a lot and became desperate. Ashamed and sad, she locked herself in her room. Her worried parents tried everything to console her, but nothing seemed to help. After weeks of being locked in her room, Penelope finally found the strength to face what had happened. She moved into an apartment and started living alone. Determined to find out why Zion had abandoned her, she decided to look for him. What Penelope discovered blew her away. Zion had become involved with another woman, a passion so intense that he couldn't control it. Feeling betrayed, Penelope experienced an even deeper and sharper pain. "Why, Zion?" asked Penelope, her voice coming out as a broken whisper. "What did I do wrong?" Zion, his eyes full of regret, replied, "It wasn't you, Penelope. It was my mistake, my weakness. I fell in love with someone else, but it was a big mistake, a terrible mistake. Fate, however, had its own plans." While Zion was living with his new passion, he discovered that she wasn't the person he had imagined. She had betrayed him, just as he had betrayed Penelope. Fate's justice had arrived, leaving Zion to reflect on his own mistakes while Penelope began to rebuild her life, stronger and wiser than before. Repentant and disillusioned, Zion returned to Penelope, begging for her forgiveness. "Penelope, I made a big mistake. She wasn't who I thought she was. Please forgive me," he said, his voice filled with remorse. Penelope had always wanted to hear an apology, but when she found out about the betrayal, the pain was even greater. "Zion, I don't know if I can. You destroyed what we had," said Penelope, with tears in her eyes. "Penelope, I swear I'll never betray you again. Give me one more chance. Let's reschedule our wedding. This time, I promise I'll say yes, please," begged Zion. Imagine being in Penelope's shoes. Would you believe Zion's promises? Although she had dreamed of marrying him, at that moment, the dream seemed impossible. Penelope, with a heavy heart, said no. It wasn't that love was over, but trust was. She had lost faith not only in Zion, but in all men. Penelope, with tears in her eyes, walked away, knowing that her heart needed time to heal. From that day on, Penelope became suspicious of anyone who claimed to be interested in getting to know her. Being dumped on her wedding day was a major trauma, and she decided she didn't want to get involved with anyone anymore. But then, one morning when she arrived at the office, a man approached her to ask her to do a project for him. It was Michael, who had heard a lot of good things about Penelope and knew she was a talented professional. "Hi Penelope, I'm Michael Dunnies. I'd like to hire your services," he said when he found her. "Of course, Michael. Sit down and tell me what you need," Penelope replied, inviting him to sit down. After discussing the project, Michael, who had been attracted to her admirable beauty ever since he saw her, asked an unexpected question. "Excuse me for intruding, but are you married?" Penelope was surprised by the question, but answered, "I almost got married, Michael." "Why do you want to know?" "Because I'd like to invite you to have lunch with me." "What do you think?" asked Michael. Penelope smiled and replied, "Yes, I do, Michael." Penelope was amazed that he had accepted her invitation. She didn't usually go out with anyone, but there was something about Michael that attracted her. My friends, she wasn't sure why she said yes. Perhaps it was the kind way he treated her, or his striking good looks. That night, lying in bed, Penelope couldn't get Michael's beautiful eyes out of her head. But then she came back to reality and thought, he's probably just another creep who wants to seduce me and then leave me. I'd better go to sleep and forget about it. The next morning, right at the start of working hours, her secretary came in and said, "Penelope, there's someone who wants to speak to you." "Will you get that?" asked the secretary with a smile. "Is it Michael?" Penelope asked, with a twinkle in her eye. The secretary nodded and Penelope took the call. Strangely, joy flooded her heart when she heard Michael's voice on the other end of the line. He said he'd enjoyed lunch with her and asked her out for the evening. Without hesitation, Penelope accepted. That date was just the beginning. Many others followed, each one more special than the last. Michael was a gentle man with a pure heart. He came into Penelope's life like a ray of sunshine after a storm, bringing a calm she had never felt before. After 3 months of friendship, on a beautiful moonlit night, Michael finally confessed that he was in love with her. When Michael confessed his love, Penelope felt confused. Although she had left Zion behind, the memory of him still haunted her. Realizing that she was still hurt by being abandoned at the altar, Michael said, "Penelope, I don't want to pressure you, but I want you to know that my feelings for you are sincere." "Penelope, I promise I will never betray you or leave you," said Michael, holding her hand lovingly. "Michael, you've been a real angel in my life, but I need time to understand my feelings," Penelope replied with a sad smile. Instead of feeling joy, she felt sad. Her heart was still wounded and she was afraid of getting hurt again. Penelope wanted to believe in Michael's love, but she couldn't be sure. For days, she felt trapped between two worlds, the painful past and the promise of a happy future. Michael, with patience and dedication, showed his love in every possible way, always by her side without demanding anything. However, in moments of pure fragility, overwhelmed by confusing thoughts and painful memories, Penelope fell into a deep sadness. She knew she needed to react, but she couldn't. She spent the whole day in bed, with no energy for anything. She didn't eat, sleep, or go out to work. Michael tried to call her several times, but to no avail. Worried, he went to the building manager and explained that he hadn't heard from Penelope for days. Together, they decided to open the door to her apartment. Penelope was lying motionless on her bed when Michael found her. Without wasting any time, he quickly rushed her to the emergency room. The doctor said she was like this because she hadn't eaten for days, but assured her that she would recover. Michael stayed by her side the whole time. Every time Penelope opened her eyes for a few seconds, she saw Michael sitting by her bedside, watching over her. Soon afterwards, weakened, Penelope went back to sleep. As her body recovered with the help of the serum, she looked at Michael with tears in her eyes and said, "Now I know you'll never leave me, Michael." The fear of being abandoned again made it difficult for Penelope to accept the love Michael offered. "Penelope, my love for you is immense. I don't want to put pressure on you, but I want you to know that I'll always be there for you," said Michael, his eyes full of sincerity. "Michael, I love you too," replied Penelope, with a bright smile. "You brought light into my life when everything seemed dark." Months later, Penelope found herself once again in front of a church full of people, dressed as a bride. This time, however, her steps were firm and resolute, each step reflecting the certainty that Michael would never abandon her. The church was beautifully decorated, and the guests' smiles shone as brightly as the chandeliers. As Penelope walked down the aisle, she looked around and saw familiar faces, full of love and support. Her eyes fixed on Michael, waiting for her at the altar, with a smile that oozed affection and confidence. When the priest asked the traditional question, Michael answered with a resounding and emotional yes. His smile for Penelope was full of promise and true love. At that moment, the whole church seemed to light up even more. Penelope, with tears of joy in her eyes, replied with an equally firm and hopeful yes. The ceremony continued, and every word felt like a balm to her once wounded heart. And so Penelope, who had once been abandoned at the altar, found healing and redemption in the same place. She felt that, even in the darkest moments, the light of true love always prevails. That day, she not only married Michael, but also closed a painful chapter in her life, paving the way for a future filled with love, trust, and happiness. The celebration was magical, with laughter and dancing that lasted all night. Penelope and Michael danced together, their hearts beating in perfect harmony. Every movement, every look exchanged, was a reaffirmation of the love that united them. And so they lived happily, knowing that true love not only heals, but also strengthens, enlightens, and transforms. Did you like Penelope and Michael's story? Leave your like and share your thoughts in the comments below. We want to know what you thought of this emotional outcome and how this journey of love and redemption touched your heart. Your feedback is very important to us. Thanks for watching and see you next time.